Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 112th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I'm Brian Nemhauser, at Hawk Blogger on Twitter, and man, do we have an awesome show tonight. Not only do we have an undefeated 5-0 Seahawks team coming off a bye week, starting their division play, not only do we have rumors of Antonia Brown potentially signing and players coming off injuries, and Damon Harrison getting weird numbers. We got all sorts of stuff to talk about, but we also have a very special guest today, AJ McCord. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will get into asking you a bunch of questions and introducing you to our crowd. Before we do, let me bring in the other fellas. Evan Hill at Evan and SEA on Twitter. Good to see you, dude.
Did you miss me last week?
Of course we did. You know, it's funny.
You sure you missed me?
Well, you're asking about whether I missed you. I always miss you. But there was a very mixed bag in the comments. There's people were like, oh my God, where's Nathan? Where's Evan? And there were other people like, this is the best show ever. So, we kind of had a little bit of both. So
I'm surprised it wasn't more like Nathan and Evan never should come back on the show. I'm surprised there wasn't like 90% that take.
No.
I have fans somehow. I don't know how it happened, but
you do. You absolutely do. And that, for folks that don't know, Nathan Ernst at Nathan11 on Twitter. Good to have you, Nathan. Hey, I think you and I only got into like one or two Twitter fights this week. I think that's an improvement over.
And I tried to bait you like 4 or 5 different times and got nothing. So
it's true.
I was going hard on the Adam slander today. You weren't biting.
And last but never least, Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter, up in Toronto in his new pad. How's it going, dude?
It's good. We had a different kind of show last week, and it's good to have the original crew back. And I missed you guys last week. I'm not going to lie. It was too positive around here, but it was nice and fun. It was a nice change. Yes. I'm happy to have everyone tonight again.
It was a very mature conversation. So for folks that don't know, AJ McCord, it's at AJ_McCord, MCCORD on Twitter. Must follow. And I have to admit something, AJ. I didn't know you covered the Seahawks until this week. It was like, I consider myself I know everyone covering the team and I hear all the names going through the press conferences. And then I heard someone ask a question about Snacks Harrison and Pete Carroll make some comment about him looking svelte. And it's like, who is this person? So would you mind taking a few seconds, introducing yourself to folks that may not know you, and we'll start there.
Yeah, so it's not abnormal that you maybe don't know that I cover the Seahawks. I actually don't live in Seattle. I work for the CBS affiliate in Portland, which is Coin TV. So we come up for every Seahawks home game this season, and we did towards the end of last season as well, because half of our market is in Washington. So we got a lot of comments that people really wanted to see more NFL coverage, and so here we are. And I have covered the NFL for years. It's sort of where I started, and so it was really fun for me to get back in on the Seahawks. But yes, I am on all those Zooms, and yes, I did have to look up what svelte means, because I couldn't quite grasp how that was describing somebody like Damon Harrison.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know, there are actually 2 people on this podcast that are of members of the tribe, Jewish folks. So I heard svelte. I knew exactly what that meant. It's an old Yiddish term for someone who's very skinny. And that is not what most people would describe Damon Harrison as. And it's not surprising in the Northwest that there weren't a lot of people familiar with Yiddish. I got to say, I was not shocked that people did not know that. But if I looked, I tried to learn a little bit about you, knowing you were coming on the show. So you grew up in San Diego, it sounds like, and you were a Chargers fan. Is that true?
Yes, I was a diehard Chargers fan. It's the team that I learned football from. So I'm born to have my heart broken from a very young age. My mom and my grandma had season tickets for 30 plus years. And so not only was it the Chargers that I learned about football, but it was also from the women in my family that I learned about football. And my grandmother loved that team. She lived and breathed and died by what happened to the San Diego Chargers. So it was always our constant joke that grandma was hiding in the closet because she couldn't stand to watch what the Chargers were going to do next. So that's where I became sort of a football fan, but I'm also a very proud San Diego native. And so when they moved the team to LA, I became an NFL free agent.
Well, I need to know how you feel about them moving to LA. Are you said a free agent? Are you still a Chargers fan or?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Wow. Tell us about that. Like how did that, like, that's a terrible experience.
Well, it wasn't like they just left, right? Like this was a very bitter breakup. This was a decade-long battle between the owner of the Chargers and the city of San Diego. And then we're back and forth and things said by both sides really, and just never came to an agreement. And as somebody who had poured their heart and soul into this team, it was so personal that they decided that there wasn't enough money or there wasn't enough fans that they could keep the team in San Diego. And then you see what's happened to them in LA and they can't sell out a soccer stadium. And there's a part of me that's like, good. Like come back to San Diego. I will welcome you with open arms. But you can't go to our arch rival.
You've officially found yourself a home on this podcast. There are many bitter fans here.
I was about to jump in and just say, I want you to know my childhood was also ruined when the Sonics left Seattle.
Yes.
And there's no way in hell I would ever follow that team to that dusty ass town. I'm sorry. We're trying not to swear on this podcast anymore. That dusty town in Oklahoma City. I completely empathize with you. I'm sorry your team was stolen from you. I get it. It's heartbreaking and it's evil.
And it happened in childhood. I mean, it was traumatizing. I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate bitter fandom. So a couple more things before we actually get into talking about Seahawks. So it seems like you are a super athlete. You were a gymnast. You're into surfing, running, all this kind of stuff. And I actually posted a GIF I found of you did I didn't even know what gymnastics move that was. I said it was a one-handed front spring. I really don't know. But you did your first pitch and you did some front flip basically to throw that ball. First of all, what is the correct term for what you did?
A one-handed cartwheel, but front flip sounds way cooler. Let's go with that.
It seemed more impressive the way I said it. But is that something you knew you were going to do? Like, how did that come about?
No. So that was really funny. Last summer, the Hillsboro Hops, which is the minor league affiliate in town, they had a first pitch competition among a bunch of the media members. So they invited a bunch of us out to throw the first pitch. And whoever won, you were judged based on accuracy, speed. I think your catcher was deciding that one. And then the other half of your score came from retweets and comments on social media. And I'm a washed up athlete at this point in my life, but I have been an athlete my whole life and my competitive nature has not gone anywhere. It's probably only intensified as I've gotten older. And so of course I immediately start thinking, okay, what can I do to set myself apart? I'm the only woman in this competition. I need to represent, women. I need to represent all these things. And so, I practiced, and I got to be honest, it never went that well in practice. But I figured even if it was embarrassing, that was also going to do well on social media. So I played my odds there.
Well, that was I was pretty impressed. I've never seen that. I've seen a ton of first pitches. Not only did you pull off the move, but your pitch was pretty solid. So props to that. The last thing I was going to ask before we get into Seahawks stuff is I also noticed that you were involved in Paralympics, and I was wondering if there was any story behind that.
Yeah, so my first sort of real job out of college, I guess, was I worked for the Olympic Channel. And obviously as a gymnast, that was what my main sport growing up. So I've always been really, really committed and dedicated to covering Olympic and endurance and outdoor sports. So when I was working for Universal Sports, I was in charge of a lot of the qualifying events before Sochi. So I was doing writing, researching, reporting, producing, all the behind the scenes stuff. And I sort of got thrown into the Paralympic world. And for me, sports is so much about what we have in common versus what we have that is different. And I think that the Paralympic world is something that embodies that so incredibly well. And I'm just constantly in awe of any athlete who makes it to an elite level. But you think about not just any sort of physical challenges that Paralympians have to overcome, but any emotional or mental trauma that comes with whatever happened that put them into the Paralympic category. And I just think that those athletes deserve all of the recognition in the entire world, and that there are so many. I mean, you look at what Shaquem Griffin did when he came to Seattle. You look at what he did when he played at UCF. Like, this is people who deserve to be spotlighted. And any chance that I get to do that, because I think it just embraces more people, and more people believe that they can do something they never thought they could do before because they see someone doing it in the Paralympics.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all that. Thanks for putting up with my 20 questions. I think it's
Of course.
I think it's super important to, we got a lot of actually really cool people that not only play for the Hawks, coach the Hawks, but also cover the Hawks. And you got a pretty interesting background. So, so we had a press conference today. I can assume that you were there. What did you take away as the big news? Because there was a lot that came out in that press conference.
There was a lot, and I think it's just so entertaining. And I saw so many 12s on Twitter call it before Pete Carroll even stepped to the mic. But, that Antonia Brown rumor came out about half hour before the press conference. And sure enough, someone was spot on with what Pete Carroll was going to say. And it was basically along the lines of, well, we're always involved in everything, and we're always trying to make our team as good as it can be. And so, of course, we're looking into that, which is like the best non-answer and like the most traditional Pete Carroll non-answer that you're ever going to get. So yeah, there was a lot of that. There was news of Sullivan moving and adding defensive end, I believe, to the end of his name. We sort of got injury updates, but not really. No one really knows when Snacks is going to show up. So it was like a lot of updates without actually getting any concrete information, which Pete Carroll's very good at doing.
AJ, can I jump in here real quick and ask you, what was your take on the whole Jamal Adams feedback we got today? There was like some early speculation by reporters that potentially he suffered a setback, but either you or somebody else asked if he had a setback, and I think Pete Carroll said no. But what's your whole reaction to that injury news? I think a lot of fans were expecting Jamal to, play against the Cardinals coming off of bye week.
Yeah, and I think they haven't exactly like ruled out that possibility, but it does feel like it gets slimmer and slimmer every single day. But then again, I just don't know how much of that is gamesmanship by Pete Carroll, because he has an opportunity here to sort of play this injury into what it is, how bad it could be, I suppose you could say. But I do know from having covered Jamal, even just in these first 6 months and having a few mutual friends, that he is somebody who wants to be on that football field. So if there is a chance for him to play without further injuring himself, he will be on that football field on Sunday, regardless of what Pete Carroll and the training staff maybe want to do with him.
Yeah, I think one of the things there, AJ, that's interesting is Kyler Murray is as mobile of a QB as there is in the league right now. For anyone that watched the play of Dallas, I mean, the guy is fast. And so you have to wonder if that's playing any role in the team maybe saying, well, Ryan Neal, Demarius Randall, we can get by with you for another week and maybe not have the chance that Jamal Adams is going to pull his groin further trying to chase down Kyler Murray.
Totally. They're playing the long game. I mean, this is what the first division game, right? And so I think this coaching staff, this Seahawks team has their eyes set on playing well into January and hopefully February. And so I think you think about, like, of course you want to beat the Cardinals this week, but if you don't, you don't want Jamal Adams to do something worse to injure that groin. And so if there's any question of whether he's healthy, then sure. I mean, this is a defense, that gives up an average of 471 yards a game. This is a Cardinals offense that averages 400 yards a game. Seahawks are still 5-0. So even if the Cardinals have an average game, Seahawks have figured out how to do it with allowing their opponent to get as many yards as they have. So there's certainly a lot of things for the coaching staff to weigh in before Sunday.
AJ, circling back to you briefly mentioned Antonia Brown and 12's having opinion. So given where this team is as a passing team and given his history towards women, like where are you at on that? Like how comfortable would you be on the team signing someone who has such a checkered past, and where's your head at on that?
Yeah, I think Bobby Wagner probably said it best. I mean, it's not really in my wheelhouse to have an opinion on like who they sign or who they don't, but I will say that, you know, Bobby Wagner said I can't judge anybody that I haven't met yet. And so also, so being in Portland, the Trailblazers have been sort of my bread and butter for much of my time here in Portland. And you think of a guy like Carmelo Anthony, you think of a guy like Yusuf Nurkic, and those are two players that came to Portland with a lot of negative noise surrounding them. And then you look at who they became or who they sort of showed themselves to be in Portland. And so for me, that experience shows me that maybe it's as much who the player is surrounded by as it is what they have been, you know? So to that extent, I think you have Russell Wilson, you have Tyler Lockett, you have Bobby Wagner, you have KJ Wright. So could this be the place that Antonio Brown finally finds himself or some footing or some sort of, you know, like not revelation, but a little bit of restoration of his reputation, maybe. But when I look at the Seahawks, I don't necessarily also think, oh, I know what will really make it click is another wide receiver. So from that perspective, it's like, well, I think the Seahawks have bigger needs for sure than in the wide receiver group. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and it will be interesting because Antonio Brown is going to be somebody who, regardless of whether you sign him or don't, people will have opinions on either option.
So looking at this matchup, AJ, what are you thinking about from a Seahawks angle as being keys to beating the Cardinals? Like, what are the things that are top of mind for you?
You have to remind Kyler Murray that he is still young in this league. You have to not let him get his confidence like he clearly did against the Cowboys. Kyler Murray is an electric player. I think he's going to be in this league for years and years to come. But I also think that he's still young. And while he does have way more weapons than he did last year, I think if you maybe spy Bobby Wagner on Kyler and just remind him that he is constantly going to be at the forefront of the Seahawks defensive attention, then you can do a lot to shake him up and make those weapons that he has in the wide receiver group a little less threatening, because you do not want to see DeAndre Hopkins going off for a fantasy dream day against the Seahawks, because again, that's a shootout between these two, I think, is bound to happen, but someone has to balk first, and you have to make sure it's Kyler Murray.
You know, AJ, this is going really well, and then you started talking positively about Kyler Murray, and I'm gonna have to hear about it from Evan for the rest of the night. So, you know,
he's a good quarterback. I mean,
Thank
you have to stop
AJ.
him.
Thank you,
I'm
AJ.
very sorry, but you're not going to win the game if you don't stop Kyler
Personally,
Murray.
I'm very excited to watch the MVP and Russell Wilson play on Sunday.
Oh,
I think
The
it's
MVP with 9 completed passes against the worst secondary in the league.
brutal take.
I did not go that far. I just said this was going to be a shootout. I am not putting Kyler Murray in the MVP conversation yet. Russell Wilson has broken a record literally every week of this season, except for the bye. And so I just don't know that I don't know that Kyler's on that same proven level. And that's what I mean. You have to remind him that he is young and he's had some success, but he is not Russell Wilson yet, because Russell Wilson's best characteristic is that he's done this for 9 seasons. So I think Kyler Murray is a great quarterback. I think it's gonna be such a fun game to watch. I'm not quite willing to put Kyler Murray and not willing to do that.
Just to be clear, I don't believe that either. I just like trolling Brian. That's
I'm
funny.
just really happy, AJ, that in these last few minutes we have you, we were able to steer you away from an affiliation with Evan. It is that is the kiss of death. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're back on the bright side. You're in good shape.
Didn't even know that was a pothole to avoid. Thanks.
Oh, it most definitely is.
You asshole.
only other thing I'd ask AJ is where can folks find you? Where should they find more coverage from you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, AJ_McCord, and I do a lot of really fun stuff with Coin here in Portland. So if you go to coin.com and just search AJ, then a lot of my stories come up, which I know a lot of our viewers and listeners are in the Northwest, I would assume. And so one of the series that I do, if you like things outside of football as well, is I have an outdoor series that Coin and I do every single summer where we go adventure. So like I went whitewater rafting, snowboarding, e-biking, wind sailing, just a lot of really fun stuff. So you can find me on coin.com, but then you can also find me on social media, AJ_McCord.
How do you get that job? How do you get paid to travel and like do fun stuff?
You have to actually be an athlete, Evan.
No, you don't. It's as funny when you fall on TV as it is when you succeed. In fact, my snowboarding video, I was up at Mount Hood because Mount Hood's one of the only places in the Northern Hemisphere that you can ski and snowboard year round. And so I was up there when Team USA was training, and Nick Gepper, who's a freestyle Olympian, he was trying to teach me how to go off of a jump in my snowboard, and it did not end well. Like it was an epic crash. So turns out that's just as entertaining though. So I'm happy to make a fool of myself on television, which that's really what that job is.
Love it. I think I saw somewhere that one of your favorite places in Oregon is Sisters. So I knew right then, as a fan of Black Butte and Sisters, I was going to be an AJ McCord fan. So, hey, AJ, thank you so much for coming on. We hope we can have you back. And if you haven't already, folks, follow her at AJ_McCord. That's 2 C's on Twitter. And thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me anytime.
All right. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks. You too.
All right, fellas. Always good to meet a new member of Seahawks media, and you can never get too many perspectives on the team we all love. So good on AJ for having her here. She is not going to be the only cool guest we have. Evan, you want to talk about who's coming on our post-game show on Sunday?
Yeah, Stacy. How do you pronounce her last name?
Rost? Oh no, Evan. No, don't help him. Make him do it.
I don't know if it's Roast or Rost. Stacy Joe Roast? One of the three. 710 ESPN.
We're gonna have all 3 Stacys on the show on the post-game show.
Oh God.
We just lost her actually.
So she just got Jermaine Ifedi. Oh man.
She's coming on the post-game show. I'm super excited about it. I somehow conned her into doing it. I have no idea how I got her to do it.
That's huge. She would be my first choice as who to replace, Dory Monson on the Seahawks post-game show. Like, I think she's fantastic. She's smart. She's funny. She knows the Hawks well. She asks the right questions. She has the right points of view. So, like, super stoked to have her on what is probably the most inappropriate post-game show. Hopefully she can recover from this in her career. But for the meantime, I'm very selfishly excited about it.
Yeah. The only thing she told me is she can't swear. So, we're trying not to swear either, but I'm sure it'll be an emotional and fun time for sure.
It will. Hey guys. So where do we want to start tonight? I mean, I feel like everybody wants to know a little bit about Antonia Brown. I mean, I kind of feel like we got to start there. And I got to say, I'm pretty sure all 4 of us have a similar perspective here. So it may not be much of a debate, but I'll just start by saying, like, I'm seeing a lot of folks on Twitter, like when we compare AB to Josh Gordon, they're like, well, Josh Gordon's had multiple offenses and, give AB a chance to come back. And I'm like, Josh Gordon, as far as I know, I'm not like the expert in all these guys, but Josh Gordon's offenses have been addiction related. They've been, and so he's hurting himself, and you could argue he's hurting his team by not being available. But the things that Antonia Brown has done, whether they've been complaining about his helmet, which is like, whatever, to get like literally knocked off a team because he wouldn't wear the right helmet, all the way through off-field things, transgressions that are alleged, but they are pretty damning. And there's other things he's done that have been affecting other people. Like he's not been of right mind. And I don't see the comparison between those 2 players at all. And I don't understand why the NFL would reinstate one before the other, or, AB before Josh Gordon. And I don't understand why the Seahawks would consider adding someone like that. But guys, Russell Wilson was very positive about it today. He's been positive about it all along. Pete Carroll did not, deny the rumors. So Jeff, I mean, what's your perspective on the AB story? What do you think's going on?
I just think it's illogical. I get Russell's just one of these people that sees the best in everyone, sees the best in everything. So I kind of get Russell's always trying to make the team look better, and I get maybe why he wants them. But to me, it made sense when you weren't sure. Like, it made sense back in July when you weren't sure if they had a third receiver and Josh Gordon wasn't signed yet, and you didn't know if David Moore would hold up, and we didn't know anything about Freddie Swain. To bring in a headache who's going to be like your third receiver and get like 3 targets a game, to me, that's just a completely illogical decision. I don't see any purpose of doing that. And the risk of him does not come close to matching the reward. I don't see why the Seahawks would take that chance. And if you're going to add and you're going to take on a high risk, maybe do it on defense. I don't see the point of doing that with Antonia Brown. And I'm just surprised that this story popped up today. To me, it just doesn't fit where they are. It doesn't fit how they want to play. And it's such an unneeded risk from my perspective.
Nathan, where are you at on this?
Yeah, I don't want to sign him. I mean, to me, the stuff about, they're already really good at passing the ball. They already have these receivers. That's not. I don't care about that. I think adding more weapons is probably good. Protecting against injury is good. So that's really not where I'm coming from on it. I mean, he's been credibly accused of sexual assault, and is going through a lawsuit for that right now. And I don't want to root for somebody like that. And that's really it all. It's pretty much that simple for me. So that's kind of where it starts and stops for me. We had talked in the chat too about David Irving, who has had a lot of kind of similar stuff in his past. And my take on him was the same. These just aren't guys that I want on my favorite football team. And so I really hope they don't sign him.
Evan.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is like adding in Antonio Brown purely from a football perspective obviously makes the team better. I don't think anybody's disputing that. But how much better, like as Jeff said, he's such a high character risk, like multiple rape allegations, endangerment of a 2-year-old. He threw furniture off a balcony and it either hit or almost hit his 2-year-old son. So this is the type of person we're talking about. He's just a nut job. And I'm just not convinced. I'm not convinced that the potential payoff of, maybe improving the offense by a little bit, like how much better can it really get? I think, Brian, you said they're the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. I'm not sure like that risk is worth that reward. I'm really not convinced it is. Another thing we talk about is like, if they signed Antonio Brown, I don't want him stealing targets from DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett right now. Antonio Brown is 32 years old, and early to mid 30s is when, for most receivers, they're on the tail end of their careers, except for the obviously very elite, which many would consider Antonio Brown to be. But I think, just to summarize, I don't think the super high character risk is worth the potential reward here. Like, this team is 5-0. Josh Gordon is facing reinstatement, hopefully to be reinstated soon. The focus should not be on Antonio Brown. The focus should be on what the hell is the NFL doing with Josh Gordon. So,
well, and the last thing I think I'll say on this, and then we can move on to other topics. But one of the rejoinders I keep hearing is, well, there's no risk. Like, sign him if he mouths off or he's a bad in the locker room, cut him. That's not the worst case scenario, guys. The worst case scenario is you sign him. He's on his best behavior. He becomes an integral part of the offense. He's really good. And then he gets comfortable. And then he screws up, or he causes a problem in the locker room, or he quits on the team, or he's not there when they need him. That's the worst case scenario. And you basically have the potential to really mess up what I think is a Super Bowl team. So I don't see a nearly enough upside. And I don't see that this is and to the point, like I agree with Nathan, this is not necessarily an area of need. If you can add more value there, great. But it would only be potentially interesting if this was like, you were without your top few receivers and you're trying to find something to keep the team competitive, and they're just not in that situation. So not surprising, because I know the four of us have talked about it. I know that there are some pretty vocal folks on the other side of this conversation. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's do a couple quick hits on other folks. So Damon Harrison, Miami. We already know Tampa Bay attempted to sign him off the practice squad. We now know Miami tried to sign him off the practice squad. He's wearing number 59, which is like a linebacker number. I don't know why the biggest guy on the field is wearing 59, but okay. Can the Seahawks afford, forget whether he's ready, can the Seahawks afford to not have him active this week and getting an active game check as opposed to a practice squad game check? What do you guys think is going to happen there? Nathan?
I gotta admit, I missed the question. Might have got distracted by Twitter. I'm sorry.
That is fascinating. What did you find on Twitter? Anything we should know?
Well, it was a video that I needed sound for, but it was of Russ, so it was Seahawk related.
It's good.
Was it the Dwayne Brown video?
Yeah. What actually happened? Did he really sound really sad about it?
No, Dwayne was just like constantly consoling him like a father is what on the bench. It was nothing particularly interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely not super interesting with that sound. Anyway, sorry, Damon Harrison.
You expect him to be active this week, and do you think the Seahawks can afford to not have him be active, knowing that there's other teams trying to sign him?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you have to put him on the roster at this point, and like, I don't know. I mean, why not? Like, it's not like this is some like completely like loaded defensive line. Like, it doesn't seem like there's any real harm in having him activated, even if maybe he's not ready for a week or even two. Like, bring him up, keep him safe on the roster. Don't risk him. I mean, we talked about this, right? He might end up being their best defensive lineman by the time the year is over. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to do whatever you need to protect him. But I don't understand all the protection rules now either. So I don't know how that necessarily works. If they could just keep him there and protect him every week or what.
They could, but man, that seems like a crap way to treat signed.
Do you guys know where the Arizona Cardinals run game ranks in DVOA?
Yeah. On offense or defense?
No, offense.
No.
Top 5.
I think it's probably top 5 because of Kyler.
They're second in the NFL.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. We talked about this stretch of games coming up. It's Arizona, it's the Niners, the Bills, the Rams. They all love to run the football. And we all talk about the offensive coaches in the division, but all three of those teams are heavy run teams. So if you needed Snacks Harrison, whose primary skill is stopping the run, you got to have him in now, because if not, you're playing with fire. And a team like Tampa tried to sign him, which 2 weeks ago might have looked iffy. But if you watch Tampa play Green Bay and just dominate, he might be wondering, like, maybe I should have went to the best defense in the NFL. So I think you got to get him going now. He's shown tremendous loyalty to the Seahawks so far, so I think that should be rewarded.
Were there any details on what his contract was? I assume it's just veteran minimum.
Not that I've seen.
No, nothing out yet.
Okay.
Quick note on that though: Football Outsiders filters out quarterback runs now as part of the passing offense. So,
interesting.
You mean as part of the rushing offense?
Yeah, so if a quarterback scrambles, it does not count towards their rushing defense.
That is interesting. A lot of Kyler's runs are by design.
So then those do count. So yeah.
So I mean,
interesting.
I think I don't know. We'll get into that a little bit more. I think from what I've seen of Arizona games, he's their most dangerous weapon, and not his passing. Not his passing. His legs are, to me, he is he is not quite Lamar Jackson from an agility perspective. And he's not going to make people miss like that, but he is faster than probably any quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he is lightning fast. So I don't know that Damon Harrison's going to have much to do with that, but he certainly would help with Kenyon Drake, running up the middle, you'd hope. I'm going to talk about a couple other things, but let's switch gears, guys. I sense that this is a weird thing. I think it was Evan, you brought it up. You asked, what would success be over the next 5 games? I want to talk about that a little bit because I sense Seahawks fans in general. I saw a lot of the responses to your question on Twitter, and a lot of folks are talking about like, well, if they go 3-2, then that can get them to 12 wins, or 4-1 would be good. But like, there's a lot of folks that are just talking about getting to 12 wins and getting into the playoffs. And I got to be honest, guys, I think this is the best team in the NFL. I think they should win the Super Bowl. I absolutely believe that. And I don't know why I'm so maybe off on a different perspective on this than other folks. But if you really want to win the Super Bowl, I don't think going less than 4-1 over the next 5 games sets you up for your best chance to win the Super Bowl. So that's success minimum to me is 4 wins. And I'm kind of curious, like, where are you guys at on that question?
Before we even start this conversation, let's read out the next 5 games that is this stretch. So obviously this Sunday at Arizona in Glendale. Next Sunday, November 1st, Niners travel to Seattle. The following week at Buffalo. The following week after that, at Rams, so 2 straight away games. And then Thursday, November 19th, Thursday Night Football, Arizona visits Seattle. So what is, I guess the question I posed earlier, I think it started in our group chat, was, I want to be careful about how I phrase this. It's not what you think will happen. It's not what should happen. It's what defines success over these next 5 weeks for this football team. And I have my own answer, and I've come to terms with it. But Nathan and Jeff, I'm curious to hear your takes.
Yeah, I'll come in. I kind of went to the opposite end of the scale as Brian, and I'm looking at it as what puts them in best position down the road. And I did say I thought 3-2 was successful. And that says more about our division than it does about the Seahawks. I think our division is by far the best in the league. I think all 4 teams are good. And I know you mentioned 12 wins, but if you go 3-2 in this stretch, that means you're starting 8-2. And that means your 8-2 will be with that NFC East Jets 4-pack coming up. So that gets you to 12 wins right there with 2 games left. So I think that gets you to 13 or 14. And I think that 3-2 in this stretch where you got to play top 10 teams back to back to back, I think is very good. And I think that sets up the rest of their season well. I get what you guys are saying with number 1 seed. I get maybe I should be striving higher, but I think that puts them pretty much on path where I think they're going to go this year.
So let me drill down one level further. Let's strip away the Buffalo Bills game. They have 4 NFC West games. Yeah, Cardinals twice, Rams, and Niners. What does success look like for those divisional opponents? What does that record look like? Is it 3-1, 2-2, 4-0?
I'll say 3-1.
Interesting.
Well, and I want to hear Nathan's answer. I also just want to jump in. Like, I do think we overweight our division a little bit, to be honest. Like, I don't think the Rams, 49ers, or Cardinals acquitted themselves well over the past few weeks of being like teams to really fear. The Rams are 9th in DVOA. The Cardinals are 10th. The Cardinals are essentially equivalent to the Dolphins, who we beat in Miami pretty soundly. Like, the Dolphins are 11th in DVOA. So San Francisco's 13th. Buffalo's 19th. So I don't know. Like, if you stripped away the names and the division games and you said we're going to, play teams that are ranked basically 10th or worst over the next 5 weeks, and you're 5-0 and have the best offense in the NFL and the best player in the NFL, we really think 3-2 is like success?
Yeah, because it's not about what the team is in general. It's how they match up against you. And we've seen what Sean McVay has done to this team over the years. And what's the biggest weakness of this team? All three of those teams are kind of uniquely built to give them trouble. So that's where my perspective comes from. If you're just looking what team is better, I would take Seattle every time, but it's not that simple because we've seen simply what McVay does to our scheme on defense and what Shanahan can do and what Arizona did last year in a must-win game. So that's kind of my opinion. I don't know if you guys see it. Yeah, I assume Evan sees it differently. Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, I think 3-2 is like that's the minimum criteria, right? If they go 3-2, fine, totally understandable, right? I mean, we'll see how it shakes out, but I think if you look at it, you figure maybe they lose one to either the Bills or the Niners, and then they probably lose to the Rams because for whatever reason the Rams are giving them a ton of trouble with McVay. So if you get out of that with 3-2 playing, not any top 10 teams, but teams that are right there at 10 and 11 and, right near there. I think that's fine. I think, what you really want to see though is 4-1, that is going to be much more, that's going to be encouraging, right? 3-2, you probably don't feel much different about this team. 4-1, you're probably really feeling like this is building, right? You're 9-1 at that point. You've beaten some good teams, which is it's not really clear how good the teams Seattle's played so far have been. So I think this is definitely the toughest stretch that they've played. So that's what I'll be hoping for. And I think it's pretty reasonable to hope for 4-1. Because how many times do you think, what is Seattle on DVOA, like third or something like that overall?
Think so.
They're
okay,
fifth.
so they're fifth. Okay. So if you take the fifth best team in the NFL and the 10th best team in the NFL, how often does the fifth best team win? There's some matchup stuff in there that can get weird, but I'd probably say 60% of the time, maybe the fifth ranked team wins. Right. And so you're talking about, a 5-game stretch where, you're going to be dealing with a lot of 60-40 games. And so 3-2 is not unreasonable at all.
Brian, do you have anything?
Well, the
different?
last thing I'll say I want to hear your thoughts on this, Evan, is it's not just that I think the Seahawks are the best team in the league, which I actually do believe that to be true. From everything I've watched of the NFL this year, I think the Seahawks are the best team in the NFL. Yes, that includes the Chiefs. Yes, that includes the Ravens. I would take the Seahawks in those games. But man, Super Bowl seasons are not just about being the best. It's about a lot of luck and a lot of things breaking your way. The Seahawks have the easiest schedule, for the rest of the way. These are the toughest games, and they're not that tough. This is not a murderer's row. This is not that tough. And so I just feel like, man, if you're the Seahawks, that you want home field advantage. I think you want to guarantee home field advantage, which is only the number 1 seed this year. It's not the number 1 and the number 2 seed. I think 14 wins is how you guarantee it. 13, you're probably going to have some tiebreakers potentially that you have to have in order to do that. And this is where you win home field advantage over the next 5 games. If you go 4-1, you're in great shape. If you go 5-0, I mean, you have a great chance there. And I honestly don't think that that's completely unrealistic for them to go 5-0. So I don't think it's the most likely, but I don't think it's unrealistic.
If they go 5-0, we're talking about an undefeated season at that point.
Hell yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's
a little crazy to even think about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think 5-0.
We're not there.
5-0 is obviously a big stretch, but that's really where this is the mountain stage of the Tour de France. I'm totally talking on my ass right now, right? But this is the hard part. Things are uphill and difficult, right?
Long-time biker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Love to bike. Pedal. Yes, but I mean, if they get through that and they're 5-0, and then it really is just downhill from there. So that would be truly insane.
All right, Evan, wrap us on this particular topic, and then we'll take some patron questions.
I just think what you said about the playoff changes is needs to be noted heavier. There's only one team with home field advantage, and that's changed. That's new this year. Seattle has to get the number 1 seed, and I think you're 100% correct. 14 wins gets them the number 1 seed. But I mean, Jeff, you were down on the Packers in our group chat, but like, there's going to be some competition in the NFC. I'm not even willing to count out the Rams yet. I think we have a 1.5 game lead on them, but
They have 2 losses already.
what was that?
They have 2 losses already, the Rams. So
They do, yeah. Yeah, what's funny about the question is it's specifically subjective because it's relative to what your expectations and hopes are for the team. I'm in Brian's camp. I'm really optimistic about this team. Like, we're talking Super Bowl with the start they've had. Super Bowl, like, real words, real meaning. It's a real possibility. Like, not saying it's going to happen, but with their start, they're trending that way. And this next 5-game stretch is a doozy. And I think it's going to reveal a lot about this football team.
So let's take some Patron questions. I'm probably going to start a separate tangent with this, but I have to get it out there. There's this narrative that Sean McVay's got Pete Carroll's number, right? That the Rams are 4-2 against the Seahawks under McVay. What was Jeff Fisher's record with the Rams in his last 2 years against Pete Carroll and the Seahawks? Anybody?
3-1 probably.
That's right.
Yeah.
They were 3-1, dude. And that was with pretty crappy. Like, that was also with Jared Goff one of those years. So like, they had Nick Foles and Case Keenum. Like, I agree that Sean McVay's offense has destroyed Pete Carroll's defense in most matchups, but I don't know. Jeff Fisher's was no McGenius, and he managed to beat them too. So I don't know if that narrative is going to hold over time. I'm kind of curious. Okay.
Who do you think between Shanahan and McVay, who do you think will have a better record against the Seahawks over the next 5 years?
I mean, Shanahan's got a better roster. And
all factors
They're
considered.
going to be adding Dak next year too, so it's going to get real dangerous.
Please stop.
that would suck.
It's going to happen though.
They can clear $24 million in cap cutting Jimmy G next year.
Oh my gosh, they got to do that.
Yep. So Patreon questions. All right. From Stensig. From what we've seen so far, who are the 2 teams you see playing in the NFC title game? I think we all agree it's Seattle. So who do you think is the I think there's 2 questions there, actually, that I want to add one on. One, who do you think they will play, assuming Seattle gets to the NFC Championship game? Who would you want them to match up with of the top tier NFC teams so far? Brian?
Who would I want them to match up with?
Who do you think it will be? And if you could choose from the top tier NFC teams, who would you pick?
Like, this is an NFC Championship.
Yeah. Yep.
Is it in Seattle?
Yeah.
I think we all agree Seattle's there, right? We're all picking Seattle to get to the NFC Championship.
Well, I think I've been saying, are we assuming it's in Seattle? So I'm gonna assume it's in Seattle.
Sure.
Yeah, because that where they play would factor in. Obviously, I wouldn't want to play in Green Bay. I think Green Bay is most likely. I think even what happened with Tampa Bay, I still think Green Bay is the team to beat outside of Seattle in the NFC. Tampa's the only other obvious choice from my perspective. Team I'd want to play. I mean, I'd love to get the Niners. I'd be fine beating the Packers again. That would be fine with me. Or beating Tom Brady again. Like that, all those things would be really nice. So as long as it's in Seattle, I think bring pretty much any of them on. There's not one that I'm particularly I think the Packers are the most dangerous of those teams in my mind.
I would love to play the Saints. I think we would match up very well with them.
I would also love to play an 8-8 team in the NFC Championship.
I also like to play the Washington football team.
yeah, exactly.
The Saints, I don't know. I'm not counting the Saints out. I know who I wouldn't want to play, and I know you didn't ask that question. 0% chance I want to play the Bucks. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was actually going to ask, like, how do people feel about that matchup with the Bucks? Does Brady scare you?
It's not Brady. It's their defense.
Yeah, I think they're the most complete team. I think they're number one in DVOA. Their defense with Todd Bowles is really good. And I think Brady's probably the least fearful part of that team, to be honest.
Okay, next question. Do we want to take a stab at ranking the Seahawks rookie draft class through the first 5 games? I'm trying to think, who are all the rookies that have played? Like, Daryl Taylor is a scratch. Brooks has gotten spot duty.
Hey, but Taylor's running straight really fast.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And they signed Michael Pittman, so that's
it's like Damian Lewis and then
Swain.
Yeah, and a little, I guess, a little bit Alton Robinson. So,
honestly, though, through 5 games in 6 weeks, fans are not talking enough about how good Damian Lewis has been.
I agree.
Yeah.
He is like, I know we on this podcast, to be arrogant for a second, like, I think assumed he would be a fairly safe, solid draft choice, but he has outperformed even our expectations. Like, he's playing like a top 10 guard in the NFL right now. Like, he's a stud. You know what? We should be talking about Damian Lewis in the same way we were talking about DK Metcalf through, the first half of the season or whatever in 2019. I truly believe that. Pass protection, run blocking, Damian Lewis is a solid interior piece unlike anything they've ever had. And he's in his first year. Immediate contributor. That's a huge deal. It's not a flashy position, but it's a huge deal.
I agree with like 70% of what you said. Definitely a huge deal. I mean, he's not better than anything we've had. Steve Hutchinson, legit Hall of Famer.
Okay, but I'm talking in the Russell Wilson era.
We're talking about
I know that's the only area that you care about.
Okay, boob. I was like 10 years old during the Steve Hutchinson era.
I know. It's okay. We'll talk about Brian Millard another day. Yeah. Do you want to rapid fire through a few of these, Nathan, with one person name a person to answer it and ask a question?
Sure. We've already answered. Some of these are a little bit duplicates. All right, Brian. From Corey Hickok, what would it take for the fan base to finally shed their inferiority complex?
This is an awesome question. I don't know about the inferiority part, but I definitely get the sense. I mean, Seahawks fans are in the bunker mentality. Like, we're like, okay, how do we like not have the worst possible thing happen? And how do we like protect ourselves from heartache? And I'm here to tell you, like, I've been down that path. In fact, that's one of the reasons I started blogging was I wanted to think of all the possible ways the team could lose so I can anticipate it and not have my heart get broken every Sunday. I kind of have some feeling that it was coming. But this isn't the team to do that with. I think you'll miss the year. You'll miss the season. You won't appreciate it if you approach it that way. This is the season to actually like look forward to every Sunday, expect them to win, be positive about the potential that they're going to win. And if they lose, that sucks. But guess what? You're going to feel so much better through the whole process than if you're constantly looking for the potential pitfalls and how this is all going to fall apart. And then if they finally actually win a Super Bowl, you're like, oh, they did it. Like, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. Like, embrace it. Enjoy it. Now's the year to do it. They don't come around very often.
Yeah. This is actually interesting. I read the question differently when you said inferiority complex. To me, I think that we still also, as collective Seahawks fans, there's still a strong like little brother attitude at times too, like complaining that Russ isn't getting enough credit, and like some of that stuff is fair, but there's that aspect of it too, and I don't know when that goes away. All right, Jeff, when do we start considering the skill players the Seahawks have as the best in the NFL? What other teams What other teams compare across the talent at running back, wide receiver, and tight end?
Let me see. Tampa Bay, maybe. They got Mike Evans, Godwin, Ronald Jones is playing pretty well, and Gronk showed signs of life last week. But really, the Seahawks with Carson, DK Metcalf, who we all said is probably one of the best receivers in the NFL, and Tyler Lockett, who still is criminally underrated, does not get enough attention. The tight end group's been fine, but they're right there. When the Saints have Kamara and Mike Thomas going, that's pretty good, but Mike Thomas hasn't really played this year. The Chiefs are dominant with Kelsey, Tyreek, and Edwards-Helaire, and potentially Le'Veon Bell and Hardman. So, but the Seahawks are up there with everyone, which is pretty crazy to say. And even guys like David Moore have played pretty well this year. So, yeah, they're right there. DK Metcalf is as good as any player at the receiver position right now. So, Chiefs, them, that probably top two.
Just goes to show you how important a quarterback is, because you could say the Vikings have fantastic skill position players. You could say the Browns have fantastic skill position players. But those don't come to mind, right? Because of who's pulling the trigger to involve those guys.
The Vikings are very good.
Yeah. Cowboys are maybe the big snub on that list.
Yeah, Zeke is Jack.
Would you put the Cardinals up there?
Nope.
Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins.
Larry Fitzgerald, are you kidding?
Yeah, I don't think there's enough behind Hopkins. Like I don't know, like they're kind of in the same class as like the Packers for me, where, you know, you've got one really good wide receiver, you've got a good running back, but like, what does that even mean, really? You know, and so, yeah, I think the one that I would throw in there, I think you nailed it with the Bucks, the Chiefs, and then I'd add in the Cowboys. All right, rapid fire here. All right, Evan, which of the next 4 games will be the biggest test for the team as a whole?
Rams, easily. I think, was that game in LA or was it in Seattle? Does anybody remember? I guess it really doesn't matter too much. Does LA have fans? Do you guys know?
Like you're saying, are there any Rams fans in general? Or at the games?
At the games.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the Rams. They've really been a pain in our ass for the past couple of years, and everybody's counting them out in the NFC West just because they, you know, shat the bed against the Niners a couple of nights ago. I'm not convinced. Let me just say this. This Seahawks defense, if they continue to play like they are, they're going to make Jared Goff look like Patrick Mahomes back there. So it could get rough.
Josh Allen will be a really interesting test too.
He's simmered down a little bit though.
He has. Just his ability to like break out and make plays with his legs could give them problems. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they play against him. They're 2 really interesting tests in that, like the Rams have they don't have like super exciting talent, especially at quarterback, right? But the system is a problem for Seattle. And then the Bills, Josh Allen's all over the place, but just what he is physically.
You know what I just realized is an interesting storyline? For the first time in maybe a decade in Seahawks and Rams matchups, do the Seahawks have the hand up in offensive line versus Rams? Is that not crazy to think about?
Well, that's what I mean. We talk about it a lot, and I'm not really meaning to troll you guys or to trigger something, but we talk a lot about like McVay's success with, you know, a bad quarterback in Jared Goff, but he had the best offensive line in football. Like
he did.
Like he had a stacked receiver crew. He had good tight ends. He had the best defender in all the NFL. Like he had a lot of things that we haven't had in Seattle for a little while. So yeah, their offensive line's been definitely not as good as Seattle's this year.
Well, no. So the comparison I was trying to make is Seattle's offensive line versus Rams' defensive line.
Oh.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like Aaron Donald and all those guys have been terrorizing us for years.
That's
It's just a
a
one-man
tough
show.
statement.
I mean, is it?
I don't
Aaron
know.
Donald is the boogeyman. You're not going to get me to say
Exactly.
anything
Yeah,
bad or
I'm
critical.
talking about the unit as a whole. The unit as a whole.
Just he's so terrifying.
Yeah.
Seattle has like a top 10 pass protecting offensive line right
The
now.
Niners had the best success against Donald that any team has had this year. Donald, and they ran. Their whole strategy was to run and take them out of the game. They didn't really drop back for deep drops at all. That was kind of the Donald remover. And we all are very against Seattle playing like that, but I found that kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, I think it's a really good question, and I mean, the interesting thing is, I don't think the Rams are a particularly good pass rushing team this year. So it is fair. Like I'm looking on.
I thought they had struggled. I was
no,
following.
They're eighth. Sorry, they're eighth in the NFL, so they're not bad.
Okay.
I was wrong. So yeah, I don't know, man. I would never bet against Aaron Donald.
What measure were you looking at just now?
Adjusted sack rate from Football Outsiders for their defensive line in particular. All right, Nathan. You got one more?
Nope.
I have one for you from a new patron. Messaged me. His name's Sam Brown. Welcome to the show. And if you haven't already, come on, folks. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. $5 gets you in, immediate access to the Slack channel. And we might even ask your question and answer it. All right. This one is for Evan.
Oh boy.
What trick play would you rather see this season? David Moore or some other wide receiver throwing a touchdown pass to Russell Wilson, or Michael Dixon throwing a touchdown pass on a fake field goal like John Ryan in the 2014 NFC Championship?
Michael Dixon, no question.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I want some big dick energy from our punter. Like, come on, man. Come on. Let's see it. Let's see it. This special teams unit is number 1 in the NFL, man. Why not start throwing touchdowns? Why not?
Did you officially bring us into the Zoom dick phenomenon?
I was just referencing his last name. I just shortened it. You guys are the ones with dirty minds.
This is true. You're not wrong. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the next 5 games and not as much talking about this next game. We've gone over it a few different ways, but not in real detail. So, I mean, when you guys look at this game, what do you think is most important for the Seahawks to be able to win it? What do you think needs to happen for the Seahawks to come out with a win? And Jeff, I want to start with you on this one.
Well, the obvious answer is just Russell has to be the best player in the field, but I'll make this more matchup specific. To me, it has to be containing Kyler Murray. And you mentioned earlier, Kyler's so fast that like getting off the edges. And last year there was a lot of fan angst that we were missing tackles, and it just realized how hard it is to tackle a guy moving at that speed. He's such a challenging player to get in space. And if Jamal isn't healthy or isn't playing, and Bobby's going to have to run around with him, that's a really hard matchup. So if you force them to pass and can't just have Kyler run around and like get those chunk plays, I think Arizona's going to struggle offensively. So I think having a good plan to keep Kyler contained and not let him kind of take over the game. And you saw what they did last year with their running game against us in that Seattle game. So I think you just have to have a good game plan and keep him not from breaking out on the edges.
Nathan, where are you on this?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you can control him, I think you're in a great spot. It's kind of a boring answer, I guess. Is like, slow down the quarterback, you got a good chance to win. But I think that's pretty accurate in this case. He'll be an interesting test. He's so fast, so quick. But I don't think that Seattle's had as big issues, tackling like they did last year. So I think they'll be able to do it, but I think that's really what it's going to come down to.
So, Evan, I've got something I'm hoping for in this game, and I want to hear from you about what you think is most important. But since Nathan just brought this up, and Jeff as well about Kyler Murray, I think the Seahawks have a player that's actually really well suited to playing against Kyler Murray. And they actually used him in this role this year. And that's Shaquem Griffin. He's been used in a specific role as a QB spy and a zone dropper who then comes up on, short passes over the middle. Would you rather see Shaquem Griffin trying to track down Kyler Murray in the open field or Cody Barton trying to track down Kyler Murray in the open field?
This is a really painful exercise.
This is the life we're living.
I'm not sure you have anybody that can reliably cover Kyler Murray in the run game and his scrambles. Have you seen that guy run? Yeah. He's so quick. Every time I watch him play, it reminds me of how slow Russell has gotten. with his cement brick feet. Like Russell runs in like slow motion with this dad bod. It's like me trying to run, in flag football down the soccer field. Like it's just not working. Like he's clearly carrying a little dad bod weight. But God, push on the question. I'm not sure. Like I don't think you have anybody that can reliably cover him in his quickness. It's just scary to even think about.
I think you're underselling Shaquem, man. I think he's
I don't think so. No.
All right. So what do you think is most important? Like, what are you going to be watching on Sunday to help you feel like, okay, this game's we got a good chance to win this one? What's the top thing you're gonna be looking at?
Limit the explosive plays from DeAndre Hopkins. He's like the most dangerous player on the Cardinals, in my opinion. Like Kyler Murray only completed 9 passes against the Cowboys. As much as I hype him up, like he's very hot and cold. And I know the Seahawks defense has been trending downwards in explosive plays. I think we only gave up like 2 or something in our recent week, or maybe that was the week before. I know they start off at some outrageous number and it's slowly been declining, but you've got to limit the big plays. I know that's a very simple answer, but DeAndre Hopkins, if he gets over the top, this game could get away from you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. I mean, look, there's 2 things to me. One, if the Seahawks offense is playing well, I'm not concerned. I think if the Seahawks offense is playing well, I do think the Cardinals defense is of note. They have some players that they've had some performances that have been pretty impressive, but they also haven't faced that many tough offenses. So if the Seahawks are moving the ball, then I think the score will be fine. The other thing is if the Seahawks can limit the run game of the Cardinals, and that includes Kenyon Drake, but mostly Kyler Murray. I mean, Kyler Murray's had, I'm looking right now, I mean, one, he had more rushes last game than he had completed passes. And he had 74 yards. He's had over 70 yards in 3 of the 6 games and over 60 yards in 4 of the 6 games. So, I mean, he's gaining a lot with his feet. So I think that is the hardest thing for the Seahawks that I think they're least equipped to deal with. But if they're able to contain that, I think it's going to be really hard for the Cardinals to move the ball. All right. Do we want to cover anything else before we get into predictions? Because, I mean, there's a lot that happened today. We could talk about the Philip Dorsett coming back potentially. We can talk about Colby Parkinson starting to practice. We could talk about Steven Sullivan. Tight end to defensive end.
You know who you didn't talk about? Who's getting a tryout with the Dolphins this week?
Oh,
I don't want to unleash the takes and unleash the discourse.
We didn't talk about playing against Buda Baker this week.
That's a good point. It's a good point, Jeff. So for folks that don't know, our old buddy Malik McDowell, 2nd round pick that never was for the Seahawks. He of ATV ridiculousness fame. Is trying out for the Dolphins, apparently. And it is interesting timing, given that the player selected directly after him, one spot after him, Buda Baker, will be facing off against the Seahawks with maybe, hopefully, a similarly talented safety that cost them 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick instead of just that second-round pick a few years ago.
And just to give, I think, what is a little bit of perspective on the timing on why this came out now, back in November or October of 2019, he was sentenced to 11 months in jail in Michigan State Jail. And the timeline works. I don't know if you guys saw that video of him like assaulting a police officer. It was pretty bad, but he was like driving drunk and doing a bunch of bad stuff. So I think he's out of jail. And, you know, I mean, honestly, if we're being like really positive, optimistic, good people, like hopefully he's turned his life around and hopefully, you know, he can catch on somewhere. Who knows about his health status, but I'm sure, of course, it would be a very painful thing for Seahawks fans to watch him catch on somewhere and have a ton of success. So
I have a totally different take on this. I wouldn't care at all.
You wouldn't care?
No, I like what is the thing that I'm supposed to like if he goes on to be, you know, a Pro Bowler for the Dolphins? What am I going to be mad about? Oh, they should have kept him on the roster while he was in jail. Like,
no,
you know, I mean, like,
it's no, Nathan, it's no regret over how the Seahawks handled the situation. It's not that. It's just unhappiness with that, like that draft selection set off like a domino of effect of poor roster decision moves. But
whether he goes on to play well for Miami at this point doesn't change any of that. Like, I guess maybe I'm just already at rock bottom on the McDowell thing. Like, that was a disaster, and that was like tragic in so many senses of the word, right? And so like, and they've already made all these like bad decisions. So at this point, like, I just don't even really have any kind of I just can't care about Malik McDowell. Like, yeah, I totally agree. Like, I hope he's got it straightened out and whatever is going on is better for him. And I just can't bring myself to care about him potentially being good somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Nathan. My beef is more towards Schneider. I think that 2017 draft has had a lingering effect that is still hurting this team. Like Brian said, if they just draft, say, Buda Baker there, they don't need to spend 2 first-rounders on a safety. And there's just so many wheels and so many things. They don't have a pass rush. TJ Watt was there at that pick. George Kittle they passed on. It's now one of the better players in their division. So is Buda Baker. It's just – my issue is more with the Seahawks. I don't have any ill will if McDowell goes out and is good. I don't care about that.
Fair.
Did they really pass on TJ Watt there too?
Oh,
They did.
Oh,
Who's like the number 1 pass rusher in the NFL, I believe, right now?
Oh
Yeah, he was.
yeah, he's real good.
No, that was a disaster. Ryan Ramczyk, they passed on. It was like there was a long list
there.
Yeah, it was. I think it's one of their worst drafts, not because of even the players they picked, but because of the decisions they made.
Who the hell else was in that draft?
They took Posick a few picks before Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh yeah,
This is going to be a better year than Juju.
They had chances at both. Running backs, so whatever. But Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara.
I got Carson in that draft in the 7th round.
Yeah, that's true.
Was that that wasn't Shaquille Griffin?
That was Shaquille Griffin. That's the highlight of that draft. But that was the year they didn't take the corners that Brian wanted.
Can I admit something on where I was wrong?
Tedrick 1 pick ahead of Eddie Jackson.
Can I talk about through 6 weeks in early regret? This offseason, I was banging the drum for extend Shaquille early. Through 6 weeks, I know he's had a pick or maybe 2 picks. He's had some flashes this season, but overall, Shaquille has not played like the numbers that are leaking out of his camp in terms of what he wants to be paid like in terms of the corner market. In the offseason, we were talking like 15, 16, 17 million for the dude. He's not playing like it or anything close to it, frankly. I don't think he's been bad, but I just don't think he's played up to the level we've expected.
generally agree, but he's been pretty good the last few games.
He's picked up. He's picked up, but he had a really poor start to the season, I think, in those first 3 games.
He did. I'm really curious what this secondary is going to look like when Dunbar and I mean, it's an if. It's not a. But I'm assuming it's going to happen where they're going to have Dunbar and Griffin and Adams and Amadi and Diggs in the lineup at the same time, which I'm not sure they've had a game like that yet. So yeah, I think we might speak differently, especially given the offenses they're going to face. We're going to get so fat and happy the last 6-7 games of the season. We might think differently about it.
I'm not even comfortable saying that.
You've seen.
I'm really not comfortable saying that. Like
Pete and Norton today kind of took some shade at Trey Flowers when they kept talking about Dunbar and how badly they need him in the lineup and how they have to manage him. They're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah, Trey Flowers is a flaming pile of shit. Like,
oh, that's one way to put it.
I mean, am I wrong?
No, I just would have used different words, but your point is, you know how we all feel about Trey Flowers. He's been their worst player by far.
Something tells me we're going to get fewer complaints about ads this week.
Yeah. I mean, there are folks that are talking about JJ Watt as a trade target. People are talking about Grady Jarrett as a trade target. And I'm like, I don't think Watt is worth whatever he would cost. He's the wrong Watt to even go after at this point. Not that any others are available. And Grady Jarrett would be amazing. There's no way Atlanta gives up Grady Jarrett. Like, no way.
What about that report from the Bengals today? Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, who are both unhappy with their roles on the Bengals. Any interest there or no?
I mean, these are probably the types of trades they should be trying to make, and not like the Jamal Adams type trades. If you can do the Calais Campbell type deal, right, and get one of these guys for a 5th rounder, then I think you'd be all over it, right?
Do you regret the Jamal Adams deal? Like, look at what Buckner went for. He went for 1 first, and maybe you could have got that for Chris Jones. No, Brian, you don't have any regret on that?
No.
I kind of do at this point.
I know you do. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we'll see what they can do with him when he gets back. I mean, maybe he'll come back and the defense will take a big step forward, and then I'll come back around on it again. But like, and it's not all his fault when I say this, but the defense has been better with him out. And I know that we can argue about whether, if they use him the exact same way that they're using Ryan Neal, would that have been the case? Maybe not, but like, the defense isn't bad right now. It's not. It's not. It's middle of the road. It's a pretty average defense right now. And maybe Jamal pushes them up towards like a top 10, or maybe puts them even in the top 10, and maybe that'll be worth it. But I don't know that this team needs him necessarily. If the offense can play like this and the defense is okay even without him, a couple 1st-round picks is a lot, right? I mean,
oof.
I actually I get where you're going. Like, I thought your point of view generally has been like the whole thing that the defense is better without him. That to me is sure. Like, I think that's a little crazy.
It's not. I mean, it's just like factual. Like and there are a million caveats to that.
The defense played really well in the first part of the game against Atlanta. I really would.
There was like a quarter where they played okay with Jamal Adams.
They held Atlanta down until until garbage time. I mean, they had like 18 points or something like that, and I thought, yeah. So I don't know that I totally agree. I know what you're getting at, but this notion that the defense has been passable and maybe good enough without him, that's a fair point. I get it. And two 1st-round picks, is he going to be worth that? I don't know. My response to it mainly, guys, is just getting a player of that quality, a true blue chip talent that's one of the best players in the league, I don't think the Seahawks are going to be picking 6 anytime soon. So like, I think that I don't really regret getting that if that was the cost to especially a 24-year-old version of a great player like that.
My point would be, I agree with you there, Brian, but if they were going to give up that price, I wonder if they should have got like a Buckner or a Chris Jones, because that's a clear deficiency in what they do. But I think the one regret they should have this year is that they didn't find a way to get Calais Campbell.
Oh,
He had like 4 sacks the other day.
Well, I mean, we talk about guys like that, but I mean, what did Jordan Phillips sign with the Cardinals for? I mean, we're going to see him this week, and everyone was like, oh, he's just like Jaron Reed, like a one-hit wonder. He's not that great. And I'm pretty sure he's got 2 sacks this year. It's not like the greatest, but I mean, anyway, we're going to go back and have the same conversation.
Another thing is Clowney has 0 sacks in 5 games.
We need to start every
Jefferson's starting to fizzle a bit.
I'm a petty bitch when it comes to Clowney. I'm a petty bitch. Like, he chose like the Titans over us. Like, screw him. Like, he was trying to
the whole point was to unleash his sack potential in Mike Vrabel's defense.
He's been a non-factor in Tennessee. Almost a non-factor. He's flashed a couple of times.
He makes his big plays.
Yeah. But he has not taken over a game, though.
He still has good pressure numbers, but
yeah. But I would say, like, in 2019, I specifically remember that Niners game in Santa Clara where he like completely took over the game. I mean, it's only 6 weeks, but he hasn't had that with the Titans yet.
No, it's a lot of nothing and then a couple big plays and then a lot of nothing. That's Clowney.
And somebody's calling me out in the chat. Yes, I wanted to hand Clowney the world and more. 100% correct. Like, through 6 weeks, that looks like a major like dud. Like, Tennessee gave him like 15 million, right? Like 14 mil base, 1 year or an extra 1 million in incentives or something like that. Like, that looks ludicrous right now. Like, he's not playing like that type of money. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays the rest of the year and how his value is affected going into free agency next year if it continues.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I was personally, I was pretty bummed about David Irving signing or looking like he's going to sign with the Raiders, right? Like, that's the type of addition that would be for almost no cost, and he literally could be one of the top 5 interior pass rushers in the NFL the rest of the year, depending on what shape he's in. Like, that would have been huge.
Has LJ Collier had a better year than Judaevian Clowney?
No, I don't think so.
Got more sacks than him.
No. Are we sure that's like a definitive no?
Yes.
Yeah, Collier's hasn't really done much.
Well, let's hold off on that. I mean,
doesn't LJ Collier have a sack?
He does have a sack. Yes, it's not a particularly good way to measure.
A long time.
He has 8 pressures, Evan. So
how many? Oh, I don't want to know how many pressures Clowney has. That would disrupt my narrative.
I will tell you in a second.
No, please. No.
Collier has 4 tackles and 1 sack. I don't know. I don't know, guys.
I feel like he's been way more productive than that. But maybe
well, he's been on the field, which is just light years.
Clowney has 19 pressures.
On how many snaps compared to Collier?
He's on 163 pass rush snaps, 19 pressures versus Collier's 8 pressures and 108 pass rush snaps.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no
breaking news. Judaevian Clowney better than LJ Collier.
But not that much better necessarily.
Not that significantly. It's
not 15 million better.
Oh.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Okay, so let's get into talking about what's going to happen this week, and some predictions. And we may end up going farther, but let's at least get those out on the table. Evan, what's the score of this game?
I think Well, the weather projection for Sunday is perfect, as it always is in the beautiful state of Arizona. It's sunny, perfect weather for football. Seahawks should consider playing more games down here, frankly. So, because it's not raining, which is horrible, bad weather, as everybody agrees on this podcast, Russell Wilson's going to have a game. 5 touchdowns. I think the Seahawks score 41 points, and I think it's 41-21 Seahawks.
41-21. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, that's not really that crazy. Like, the Seahawks have been putting up like high 30s, right? The entire season.
Yeah. All right. Nathan, where are you?
I think they'll be up there around like 36, 35, something like that. So I'll go 35-30 Seattle.
Jeff, I'm going to interrupt this prediction with a breaking bit of information for this group.
Oh boy.
I need to ask each of you, who is the number 1 graded pass rusher on the defensive line, edge or interior, in the entire NFL?
It's like a low.
You get two choices. We're not going to talk about snap counts. We're just talking about highest graded. You get 2 guesses.
I cheated. So
God dang it, Nathan! Come on, man.
Is it Shaquem?
Good.
The
At least
top
you're guessing.
5.
At least you're playing, Evan. I appreciate that.
Is
The
it
top
Shaquem?
5.
Is it Jonathan Bullard?
Yes, it's Jonathan Bullard.
It actually
pansies.
No,
So
it's not.
yes, Jonathan Bullard is the number 1 ranked pass rusher in the NFL by pass rush grade.
Too.
He has a 94.1 pass rush grade on 10 pass rush snaps. So what none of us have talked about tonight is how Jonathan Bullard is going to take over this game on Sunday.
Revenge.
All right, I got one for you, Brian.
Exactly, Jeff. Good call out.
Who is tied with TJ Watt as the 7th best pass rusher this year per PFF pass rush grades?
Well, I'm looking right now so I can see. It's an old favorite of mine.
What did you bring him up last week? I didn't even know he was still in the league.
Who is it?
T.Y. McGill.
No way.
It's a weird name to see pop up twice in a week.
I didn't know he was still playing.
I know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of folks that are taking a big L on number 14, which is Yetur Gross-Matos. A lot of people are like, do not draft him. And it wasn't just you, Jeff. I mean, I think I saw it all the way through Seahawks Twitter, like, do not draft him. And he's playing pretty darn well for Carolina so far.
Well, I did want to draft Patrick Queen, and so did you, Brian.
Oh, man. Yeah. Brutal. I mean, Jordan Brooks is supposed to be back. I think we were all kind of like down on Jordan Brooks all of a sudden. Let's hope he comes back and shows us that there's reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, a linebacker that can run would be pretty good to have in this Kyler Murray game.
It would. All right, Jeff, give us your prediction in this game.
All right. Weird shit always happens when the Seahawks play in Arizona, but the Seahawks always win in Arizona against the Cardinals. So I'm going to come out and make a prediction that Evan will like. This will be the first game that Jason Myers will have to make a high leverage field goal. It will be the game-winning kick, and they'll win 36-33.
Oh, I love you. Jason Myers is a stud.
He's had the easiest season.
Excuse me? He kicked a 56-yard field goal, bitch.
Okay, fair. Well, he's coming out of his shell this week.
He's 100% of 100%.
You know, Evan, I've been meaning to tell you, there's some sort of conspiracy theory in the NFL, a conspiracy in the NFL around Jason Myers. If you go to almost any stat site that has kicker stats, and you sort by who has the best kicking percentage, like of field goals, he disappears. He doesn't show up. There's only like one out of like 6 or 7 stat sites that I've gone to, like including like ESPN. If you go to ESPN's page and you look up kicking stats and you sort by, he'll show up, but if you sort by percentage, he just disappears. So I think you might be onto something, that there is a larger force at play here.
Nathan, will you apologize to Jason Myers publicly if he kicks all of his kicks within the field goal this year?
All kickers kick all their kicks. That's not impressive.
Nathan, if he goes 100% on the year, will you?
Are we down 100% of 100%?
100%. If he goes 100%, you asshole, will you publicly apologize to our stud special teams kicker?
No.
What? That's an easy yes. Why not?
Because they shouldn't have paid him.
Oh,
If it was
it
100%,
$4 million.
If he goes 100, if he hits 100% of his kicks, it's just luck. It's not actual.
So you're saying like kicking the football like has no skill whatsoever. So like I could go over there, like to that football field right there, and if I kick it and make it, like it's pure luck.
If you kick it and make it, yeah, it's pure luck,
buddy. I got tree trunk thighs. It's not pure luck.
Well, then they should have signed you. If anyone can do it, well, they wouldn't have to pay you $4 million either, I bet.
Folks, if you aren't picking up on that, this is what it's like to argue with Nathan. It is like trying to climb a greased pole. Like,
not enough about Jeffrey Tubin.
Yeah, it is not a pleasant experience. The goalposts, as we were talking about, they move. They move quite a bit.
Look, if he makes 100% of his kicks, like, great job. I will say good job to him. I still think it's a bad idea to sign a kicker who had like an established track record of being a certain guy and then like expecting 1 year.
You hear that?
The exact same thing.
The nerds are mad that the kicker is doing well because he's good at kicking footballs.
Eric seems very upset about Brian's Jason Myers.
All I got to say is Jason Myers is the 9th highest paid Seahawk on the roster, and he is well worth it.
Oh God!
Well worth it.
I'm not with you on that.
He's the 9th highest paid Seahawk on this roster.
That's absurd.
That's absurd.
He is by cap hit this year.
Oh God. Well, guys, I told you that this team's a Super Bowl team. I believe it, and there's been one thing that's been true every time the Seahawks have gone to the Super Bowl. 2005, 2013, 2014, they whooped the Cardinals down in Arizona. So I can't say that they're a Super Bowl team and not expect them to do the same this year. So I think the Seahawks go down there. I think they beat the Cardinals 38-18. And I think we're feeling pretty good about them coming out of next week. So one of the most important parts of that score is the defense. I think we're going to see a better performance from the defense this week, and I'm hopeful that actually comes true. So anything else we want to hit before we wrap up this marathon edition of Real Hawk Talk?
Let's hope for no injuries on Sunday, because that field for some reason is built on cursed Native American land. So
yeah. And for folks, I see folks in the chat talking about being overconfident. First of all, there's no harm in a fan being overconfident whatsoever. There's no effect whatsoever. We have no impact on the game. Second of all, honestly, I think there's way more harm from from underestimating your own team. So feel free to cower in the corner. I'm not going to do that. I think this is a great team. It's gonna be fun this year. So with that, everybody, please, if you haven't already, subscribe, click the little bell to get notified for when we go live. We will do post-game show with Stacey Rost, is how you pronounce her name, Evan, on Sunday. It's going to be great. She will hopefully be able to report for her job the next day after appearing with us in that environment. Also, join over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. I saw a couple folks already joined during the show. It's great. Get immediate access to the Slack channel. Lots of good conversations going on there throughout the week about the Seahawks. And I think we got a fun thing coming up pretty soon with Burger Master. I don't think we have all the details yet, but we are going to be doing a little bit of a review about Burger Master. We'll do it live on air, and more to come on that. Hopefully we'll get some folks over there. We're even thinking about maybe trying to do a post-game show at some point there. We don't know if it'll work out, but everyone could drive in separately, so it's socially distant. We'll see. We'll figure those things out. But until then, please join us at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow the guys at Evan and SEA, at Nathan E11, at Real Jeff Simmons, and our guest tonight, AJ McCord, at AJ_McCord on Twitter. And with that, go Hawks. Have a great night.